Thank you, Architect Carl, for this wonderful introduction, and a very good afternoon to all of you. I think always post-lunch sessions are boring, but uh, Architect Carl and Architect Kapadia has already ignited the post-lunch session. So, I think I'll just like to give a brief background about myself. I am actually practicing very urban projects, but I come from a city called Jaipur, which actually is very rich in its cultural architectural heritage. And that's why when I was asked to cover this topic, I thought, why not to talk about the legacy of architecture which we actually inherit from our ancestors. And that's why, so that's why, yeah, okay. So, since I come from Jaipur, and I am born and brought up in Jaipur, I have seen a lot of transformations in architecture. And in the depth of my heart, I was taught that what were the relevance of those buildings, those old buildings, in the city of Jaipur. So, and always when we interact at Asia level, that Architect Association of Asia, I'm the chairman for Green and Sustainable Committee there. So all the 21, 22 countries, we actually talk what we have inherited from the past. That is the most important thing. And in this urban world today, I'm not telling that we need to replicate those structures, but what is needed is the learning from vernacular wisdom. So this is the topic of my talk today, and it couldn't stop me when architect Charles Correa, once quoted, the old structure, old architecture, especially the vernacular one, has much to teach us, as it always develop a typology of fundamental sense, the basic sense. And what is vernacular architecture? Vernacular architecture is the traditional architecture built by the indigenous people. They were not architects, they were not designers, but they gave this entire society a long, sustainable, resilient architecture. It reflects the culture and the tradition of the local people, using simple forms, very simple, no complication, and using the local materials, which is supported by the simple construction skills. And since, as we all know, that India has got 5 different climatic zones, and we have got beautiful vernacular buildings in all these 5 zones, right from Kashmir to Kanyakumari. And as Architect Carl was telling, that about the rating tools, we have got only one rating tools made before IGBC, made before GEM, made before Greha. So I think I had a long discussion with Pankaj Dharkar ji also, that why not to develop a rating tools on the basis of climate? It has to be very climatic responsive. So, in the modern world, to the best of my wisdom, vernacular strategies must be applied to the modern architecture. I'm not telling to follow it blindly. It's not possible. We are looking for glass buildings, we are looking for modern buildings, we are looking for very contemporary architecture, but there are certain principles, where we need to inherit something from them. And many of the sustainable architecture and its design principle actually depends on the vernacular wisdom. And again, Frank Lloyd also mentioned, once he said, folk building growing in the response to the actual needs fitted into an environment by the people who knew no better than to fit them with a native feeling. Always the legendary architects, the stalwarts, have actually learned the essence of vernacular wisdom. And influences on vernacular wisdom, is result of basic 4 factors, namely the site, the climate, the local climate, the material, local material, and the skills, local skills. And things that we need to learn from vernacular architecture. Again, 10 is the key word today. Architect Kapadia mentioned some 10 key points. So I've got this 10 key learning from vernacular architecture: coexistence, site analysis, climate response, local materials, construction methodology. I would love to, sometimes do a case study of the construction technology that was used a long way back in the Jaipur architecture when it was designed in the year 1726. Sustainability, of course, culture, contrast, expendable form. Many a times we use the word resilient. So when the density changes, how the architecture should respond is again a $1 million question. And last but not the least, that the building image. So I'll just like to stress on this 10 learnings, through various pictures and case studies. Coexistence. This is a facade, very small miniature facade, module of facade from my city of Jaipur. Traditional architecture has actually, harmonized with the surroundings. If you see a city like Jaipur, you'll never find out of the box structure. The entire architecture was harmonized with different usage. Not that it was only the commercial building or the residential building, but the entire architecture was harmonized with respect to the climate, the geography, the landscape, and of course, most importantly, human psychology. The judicial site usage. This was constructed in the year 1746, and look at the judicial, wisdom they have used. The site conditions, the then designer was not an architect, but he carries the weight. He could have used the best of the resources. We could have talked about the features like light, access, view, and size, as far as possible to that time. And today we discuss, we introspect, we actually deliberate on all these features. But many a times, without any offense, we miss out something. Because what he mentioned in his presentation was the holistic approach is sometimes lacking. When we as a designer, architect or the consultant try to integrate the things, sometimes we forgo something. There comes the flaw. So, but always if we really talk about any vernacular architecture, our ancestors, those who are not BR graduates or BTech or B, they have never ever missed anything. May it be from any climatic zone. But this is what I think Architect Kapadia talk about, the holistic approach. There has to be a holistic approach. Climate response. The reason I'm just talking this small structure from the hot and dry climate of Rajasthan is that the owner of this dwelling unit, who is a totally illiterate, uneducated man, but he know how to save his dwelling unit from the ambient temperature of 48 degree. He knows how to give sun shading devices. Cold climate in Kashmir, that uneducated poor man knows how to make his dwelling unit in the cold climate of Kashmir. This is what? This is actually vernacular wisdom, which is there in the heart of his heart, and he tried to put that in his dwelling unit, which is the most important thing for him. The recently newly constructed building when talked in Jaisalmer, I think most of you must have seen the video of this building. Actually, this is what I mean to say, This is a true learning from vernacular wisdom. If you see this building, as Architect Kapadia was telling about the passive design measures, we forgo that. We forgo that my building is in a city of Jaipur where it has got an ambient temperature of 48 degree. I make a structure, I wrap it with a glass having a certain Q value and proudly say that yes, my building is a green building because I have used this glass of this U value and this performance. I understand that not possible to absolutely get rid of this modern materials. At the same time, there has to be what was talked upon just in previous presentation was wall-window ratio. Just not that we need to wrap it with glass. There has to be a total calculation of glass wall-window ratio. And local material, very important. There's one architect who designed a resort in Jaisalmer, Architect Ravi Gupta. he was very sure that when he talked to his promoters, that when I'm going to make this 5-star property, which has got an ARR of more than 50,000 rupees a day, all my local materials should be locally procured. All my labors should not cross a diameter of 100 kilometers. Local approach. So we have to act global, but act local. This is the key word. If you see the construction methods, in the olden times, there was a solution. Though we have got a lot of new construction technology, but this is how our ancestors has respond to the local architecture of those times, those eras, those times. Sustainability, the building which was made in the present era by Charles Correa, Jawahar Kala Kendra. Efficient, what we're talking about, the consumption in a building, why not it cannot be reduced right from the time when you conceive a project? Why can't we think holistic? Why we have to depend on a lot of things which actually consume energy, and we come to that figure in which last presentation was showed that we almost consume 32 or 40% of the total energy is being consumed by buildings. Why cannot it be started right at the initial level? Site orientation, local climatic conditions, lot of things, wind tower, the Hawa Mahal. Architecture in those times, 1726, it was named as wind tower, it actually give a essence to the cultural value of that city. So that whenever, if we talk about cities like Jaipur, or for that matter, an old city of, for that matter, Mumbai, port area, always there is a character, there is an identity which actually gives you a feeling that if you see these structures, you can make out that this is from Bombay, old Bombay, or this is from Jaipur. So always architecture actually adds to the character or identity to the city. Contextual design approach. In the Northeast, how judiciously they use bamboo art. It is very contextual. Expandable forms and spaces. How the architecture and the build form can be expanded. Building image. If you want to give a character to the building, they do the local work. They celebrate the local cultural values, in the dead walls, which we today call a mural or something like that, They have celebrated the architecture in this fashion. And I think lots of things to learn from them. If we cover 50-60% of their principles, I think most of our building will be green, will be sustainable, will be resilient, and I am really looking for a time when I can proudly say that the total consumption by the building industry has reduced from how much, 40%? 40 to say 25%, 30%. That can only happen when we actually, adopt the passive design measures into our designs. We learn from the vernacular architecture, and we can see the miracle. We can see a lot of statistical changes, and this is what our ancestors have taught. And I think these are certain elements of the vernacular architecture which we should look to take it forward. Water. Today we are talking a lot about water, saving water. Every 5-star hotel you will find a tag. But water was most respected in those times. We have started disrespecting the water. So I think it's the most important resources. For this, there has to be strategies, which now most of the people try to incorporate in the design. Rainwater harvesting, recycling of the water, and just that simple, pay respect to water. Structural longevity, we have seen this in Amer Fort of Jaipur. So this is what our vernacular wisdom has taught: light and ventilation. In most of the old buildings, this was respected like anything. And of course, technology. They were coming up with technology in those era also. It's not that we were the inventor. And I think there are lots of takeaways from this vernacular architecture. The learning must should incultivate amongst us right at the grassroots level. And we always talk about 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, high time, rethink. Thank you.